the exact moment when I had it's kind of like an epiphany when things shifted for me. I got a job. I was teaching part-time at University of Southern Maine. I think I was working as a technician too, phototech, and teaching a class or two. And I was teaching at Bates College. I also got a job teaching at the workshops in Rockport. So every week I left my job on I think it was like Wednesday at USM, went straight up to Rockport. It was about 2 hours, stayed at a little motel they put me up at, a little dive that the owner owned, and taught the next day, and then would drive home and then go back to USM. And I decided, because the drive was long, that I was going to stop along the way. It was a 2-hour drive. I thought I'd stop about halfway, find a place, and every week photograph it on the way up and on the way back. I just decided that I'd do that. And that would be my project. And I stopped at this place that looked interesting, a scrubby little field. And I called this Landscape Diary number 1. And that gave me the structure I needed. And it gave me the permission to make any pictures I wanted, as long as they were there. And what a revelation it was for me. It freed me up to make pictures again.
Welcome to the show, Gary.
Thank you, Patrick.
So glad to have you on. I've been diving into your work. I think we chatted before this show a little bit, which you have a very long career. I'm just really excited to kind of dive into it. So thank you for coming on. I'm really excited.
It's my pleasure.
Of course. And so for those that don't know you, that may be following us, go ahead and introduce yourself to the audience.
Okay, I'm Gary Green, and I'm a photographer and educator. I do have a sort of long career. Most of it is anonymous, probably. I started to make books in 2014, and that's where my work started to get out more prominently, I guess. And it's still got a long way to go if it will get there. But I've been making work. My whole life, practically. I started when I was a kid, like a lot of photographers, and not like all of them, but started as a kid and got serious in my 20s. And that's that. That's the beginning. I'm from New York, Queens, New York, and Long Island, New York, and I now live in Maine.
I always like to kind of dive into kind of a little of the backstory. I'm kind of curious where and how people end up into photography. So were you always an artist or someone that thought about images, or talk to me a little bit about who you were before you were a photographer?
Yeah, well, I was quite young before I was doing that at all. I think I was always into images. If I have to think about it, I could come up with examples, where I was interested in images when I watched TV as a kid. Like, we didn't have Sesame Street. We had other shows like Captain Kangaroo, and Captain Kangaroo would have these parts of the show where you would make something. And they tell you to go get an old cereal box and a pair of scissors and a couple buttons and some glue or something, and we're going to make a little movie viewer. And you'd make some paper roll, and you cut out a screen and you kind of pull it through, and it would have images. And I did things like that. I love things like that. I drew, I painted a little bit, but I wasn't into being an artist in school. I don't know what, I think to this day, it's hard for me to be part of, big groups. And it seemed cliquish. And and at the same time, I'm sure I was with other groups that were cliquish, but I wasn't really part of groups that much, although I had friends. But I think I liked to spend time alone when I was very, very young, and oftentimes, in the basement, going through my parents' old magazines, their old yearbooks. I don't know. Yeah, I never was bored by myself, and I always liked looking at pictures. and making things with my hands. So it's not that surprising. My father was a printer, ended up actually, became a linotypist, but he studied printing in high school. And so he worked as a linotype operator at newspapers. And, so there was that. I think I always was fascinated by that too, by the graphic arts. Until the age of, say, 12 or 13, when I discovered photography, I was doing weird stuff like that, like, pretending to I remember I had a friend, and we had a pretend advertising agency, and we made storyboards, really bad ones, but I don't know where we got the idea of being art directors. It must have been from a TV show or something, and it's not like I didn't do other things. I played basketball, I did things, played Little League. I was never a great athlete, but I always liked playing things. So I had friends, but I liked the rainy days, and I liked the being on my own, and then eventually pictures. So that's where that comes from, I think.
When did you start photographing?
I think photographing is a loose term in a way, but my aunt, who also later bought me my first camera, my aunt worked for Zeiss Icon, their factory, and I can't remember where they were. She lived in Brooklyn, and she was my favorite aunt. And when NASA went to the moon, she gave me a set of slides, like a commemorative set of slides that she got of the moon shots. And it was the first time really I thought about the film, because they were slides. And my father never made slides. He always made black and white prints generally, and then maybe color later, but, black and white snapshots. And I'd never seen slides really. I'd never thought about it. And so looking at finding a way to look at them, we didn't even have a viewer. So I look at them, shine a flashlight, try to get them in focus on the wall, but you had to go right up to the wall. So you couldn't do that really. And it just captured my imagination. And I was so excited by those that I looked into it. I thought, well, how do you make color slides? It turned out you just get color film. So I got color film and put it in the Brownie and color slide film, and started making slides. I mean, they're terrible pictures. I didn't know anything about being a photographer. But then I learned, my parents bought me a little darkroom set one year, and I learned how to make contact prints, and, like Over the Moon, the picture coming out and all. I didn't have an enlarger. I had a little plastic contact printer, and didn't know how to develop film. So the first time I just wrapped it around the reel, put it in the thing, and it came out all blotchy. I took it to the photo store in the mall, and I was like, "What's this?" And the guy knew. He said, "Well, you didn't put it on the reel. Let me show you how you do that." He showed me how to use one of those plastic reels I had, like that. And really, until high school, I took a couple courses in high school, but I was never really motivated, or I didn't have the work ethic at that point. It really was after undergrad when I went to New York, and I was photographing in the punk scene and working for a photographer who, mostly I worked for one photographer for quite a few years as his assistant, and used his darkroom, used his studio, that kind of thing. And it wasn't until then that I really sort of had a sense at all of like photography as like a language, as something that you could do in the world beyond a job. Like when I told my guidance counselor in high school, what I wanted to do, want to study photography, and I got a little book. I mean, about that big, like a book you put in your pocket. It's like Guides to Jobs in the Visual Arts, and basically it just had like different jobs that you could do and how much they paid, like as if you could just get that job, and that's what. So I was like, okay, that one pays photojournalist. It says $25,000. Okay, I'm going to do that. That sounds, that's all I had. Not much advice. I didn't want to go to school in New York City, even though it would have been the best thing, because I wanted to get the hell out. Like you said, I just wanted to get out from Long Island, from my parents. I wanted to be in a new world. I wasn't ready for college, but I was ready to leave. So, yeah, that's the beginning. So I went to college, studied it a little bit, a couple of years, and then left. I didn't finish my undergrad degree till later. So I don't always tell my students that because I want them to be better students than I was. Because I mean, 1970s photography, unless you went to a few schools, was pretty bad, pretty spare. And the teachers I had were pretty poor. And so nothing really happened much until I came to New York. And that's when, so I was about 21. And it's a big jump up, Then I started to hear about Lee Friedlander and Gary Winogrand and Richard Avedon and Irving Penn. And I was looking through Vogue magazine to see, Penn and Avedon. And then I go to the Light Gallery and see shows that were there in New York. And that was the beginning of my real education and my really becoming a photographer.
I think that's awesome. It's I think that little break sometimes. You kind of alluded to a conversation we had before. Get the hell out of here. We were talking before how we had that childhood, which we get to look at a project you're working on where you talk about how you're kind of going back to your where you were from and exploring that. So we share this. So I'm excited about kind of looking at this because I have an idea for a project the same. But I'm always so curious about those early years. Partly due to the fact is I thought of little Gary, with looking through those little slides and going, I want to do that, and I just thought that was really, really interesting. And those cameras that you're talking about, your aunt giving you that camera, that was a good one. And I don't know that I know anybody that had like a family brownie, and maybe that makes me really you were shooting on a brownie.
Yeah, we had a brownie.
Did you?
Yeah. And we had not the oldest brownie, but we had a brownie. It was a Kodak brownie. The one we had two cameras. We had an Ansco. We had an Ansco camera that was truly a box camera, 620 film. Yeah, I think.
How cool.
And then we had a brownie. So the Ansco is the old camera. I don't think my father used it anymore. And I'm not sure if I could get 620 then anyway. But the brownie took 127 film, which was a square, smaller than a 6x6, more like a 1.5 by 1.5 or something like that. Maybe it was about the size of a slide, actually, close to that. Yeah, a little square. But not bigger than an Instamatic. I don't know. Yeah, but anyway, it was indeed, it was a brownie. And, my father was the type of person who would take a year to use a roll of film. He'd take a few pictures on vacation, like snap the family, and then, I don't want to waste any more film, and he put it away. Whereas I wanted to make pictures. And so we sometimes come to loggerheads about that just because, we didn't have a lot of money, and he was encouraging about what I was doing, but at the same time, I had to be realistic, and
sure,
I didn't have my own income, so it was like did what I could do.
There's a making spirit from you. It's like you said, I want to make images, and you even challenged me on that photographing idea. Would you call yourself more of a maker than a photographer?
No, I'm definitely a photographer first.
100%? But you like the tangible stuff?
I do love the tangible stuff. And that's why photo books to me are the best thing, the best place for me to be in photography. I care much more about a book than I do about an exhibition. I mean, I think prints are beautiful on the wall, and, it's nice to have photographs to look at on the wall or to go to a show. And I certainly still want to do that. But I think Tim said the same thing. It's like it's still important to do that. But the book is, it's tangible. It's repeatable. It's an object. It's something you hold. It's personal. It's yours. And it's a collection. It's not a single image. It's kind of it's like a movie, or it's like a chapbook. It's a complete thing in itself. And one photograph to me isn't a complete thing in itself. It's just it's a picture from a group of pictures. So, Yeah, I love making things. I had like a little press. I had a little. That's who I was. My parents' another present was like a little printing press where you could probably print about 3 lines of type, set the little rubber letters in the thing, and ink them up. And I love stuff like that.
Yeah.
I love.
Did you ever get into screen printing? Did you ever
No,
do
I
that?
never learned that. I never learned.
I love that.
I bet I'd love
It's
it.
so
Yeah,
fun.
yeah. I like.
Yeah,
I
it's
love
so fun. I didn't know that I would love it, and
it.
but I do. That's just there's something about that little pressing method, and I don't know, it's just really fun. Printmaking was one of my favorite things in art school.
Yeah,
I
it
really
also appeals to
enjoyed
me.
doing
Yeah.
that kind of stuff. What's that?
I said it appeal. I never did. I did printmaking in college, but I mean, I never got serious about it. But I do love
Yeah,
I do love it. I love the print shop and the beautiful
yeah,
presses, and
yeah,
I love
yeah,
the way you pull a print up from from its matrix,
yeah,
whatever. Oh,
yeah, yeah. It's the register or whatever,
yeah, it's just
whatever.
beautiful.
I'm probably butchering it. Sorry, y'all. It's been a while, but that's interesting. There's something about the tangibility too. For me, I struggle with the word. I asked you this because I was curious because I felt a little kindred spirit here. There's for me, what I love about photography is that act of making a
Yeah,
thing. In the digital world that we lived in, I think I always disconnected from images because I kind of got into it through the digital world, and it just kind of felt arbitrary. You could put thousands of images on a card, and I think when it finally hit me, it was when I started to make a thing. And you kind of use photo paper, or you do this or whatever. I used to often like stitching books together. It's one of the things I liked in art school is making actual books and making handmade things. I started to realize that I could marry this image thing that I really like to do with making a thing. And so I was kind of curious about that with you. And I love what you said about the book. And I think that's really, really interesting because they are very intimate. And I love that aspect of it too. And I'm just saying, I love it. I love it. I love it. Anyway. So my next question is a little bit more about, your, I've noticed that a lot of artists have someone that comes along that's really important to them, that teaches them a lot, and I'm kind of curious if there was somebody like that was for you when it came to photography, and more specifically photography. You have different teachers for different parts of your life, but in photography, was there anybody that might have been an artist or maybe a teacher that just had a big influence on you, and who would that be, and what did they pass on to you?
I mean, I have an answer. I'm just trying to think if that's the best answer or if there's another one. But like I said, I think when I was making pictures in New York of people, subject was very, very important. And I think that's what got me burned out. Well, that and the music business, which is a wholly sleazy business. It's not a great place to work, in my opinion. I have to say, but the music business wore me out. It was just kind of, and second, I wasn't a very commercial. I wasn't a gun for hire. Like sometimes things turned out great, sometimes they didn't. It's not a good way to be a professional photographer. It's like I had to be an artist first and a photographer second, in a sense. And so that's one of the reasons I left. But one of the things about that time too is that I knew subject, and I knew that the subject at that time was outweighing, at least in visibility, it was outweighing the photograph itself. It's like that's so and so, that's Patti Smith, that's that person, which, as we know as photographers, is like, it's not really that person. It's a photograph. It's not really a pipe. It's a photograph of a pipe. It's not Johnny Ramone. He's not a photograph. It's like that. You have to learn that stuff, I think. And I didn't have that sensibility. And when I went to grad school, I guess probably Stephen Shore was probably the most influential in that regard. He was teaching in the MFA program then. And also I lived in the area. I was around all year. It was a low residency program, but as low residency programs go, it was a longer residency. It was a 10 or 12 weeks every summer for 3 summers, and you worked in between. And so because I was in town, and I would help him in the lab. I'd be a lab person and use the darkroom and use the color processor and anything else I wanted to do. And I'd continue to show him work. And what he taught me was to really let go of the subject and make the picture, construct the picture, and let the picture stand for itself. Don't let the subject stand for the picture. And to it's not that subject isn't important. Obviously, we're tied to it. If we're working in the actual world, we're tied to our subject. But it can't be just about that. And he also taught me not to care about whether I was making boring pictures, or I should say whether people thought they were boring. It was just he said, that's the way it is. That's the way, that's what a lot of people are going to say if they don't know about photography. They're not going to know. Because at that point, he was like, he had been known, and then he was like not known at all. And then he became huge. I was like, at that moment, though, he understood that he was just as good as he was 10 years before that, and that he was going to keep making his work regardless. And he taught me to make quieter work. Before I even thought about that adjective about being quiet, I think he taught me to make quieter work and to make work with my entire person, to be present when I'm making the work. And John Davola was there too some of the time, and he was the yin to that yang. He was completely the opposite, and they often kind of bumped heads, which was good because they had very different ideas. So Stephen had sort of a more like a woo-woo, kind of a little bit of a what would you call it, psychological take on perception, and I think he still does. And you can't argue with his take on it. I mean, it works for him. And John was much more of a conceptual photographer, but still a landscape photographer. So they both had very big influences on me. John helped me with color because Stephen had never printed color, even though he made color, and John had. So he taught me how to print. Basically, he said magenta and yellow and cyan. And if it's to this, turn that one. And if it's to that, turn that way. He said, that's basically it. You do a little picture on paper. Now you know color theory. And
it's just that easy. Yeah.
Pretty much that's it. Yeah. Here it is. It's too yellow, add blue. It's too blue, add yellow. Too green, add magenta. Bard was an interesting program, and I got a lot out of it. And it was multidisciplinary. So I had poets who influenced me, and writers and painters, and there was a filmmaker there who was my friend already. He was our friend before I even went to Bard. His name was Peter Hutton, and he was a filmmaker. He died in 2016. Just a brilliant filmmaker who worked in the most personal manner, making films about cities and rivers and landscapes, usually black and white and usually completely silent. And he was one person who said to me, he preferred artists who worked on one idea their whole life, and just let it grow organically. He said the ones who jump around, they don't know what they're doing. But I don't agree with that completely. You know what I mean? But what it instilled in me was there's nothing wrong with following a simple idea and just do it and just do it and just do it. And, blinders a little bit. And, as somebody who's most artists are very sensitive, and a lot of us are thin skinned. I mean, things hurt when your work is out. It's very personal. It taught me to be a little bit, not thicker skinned, just take it easy. Don't worry about that. Between Stephen and Peter, it was I learned that it's not our job to say where our work fits in the world, how it fits, and what it's about. It's for us to make the work, and let other people figure that out, I guess, in a sense. I know in school we do it differently because, you want students to develop both intellectually and artistically. So, of course, you have to think about your work and talk about your work. So it's not quite a truth, but I think that in a sense, in a certain sense, it's true that it's not for us to do that. It's like, I go back, the other influential person for me and still is Robert Adams. And he quoted Robert Frost. He loves to quote. He knows so many poets and writers. And so Robert Frost, when asked to explain one of his poems, said, "You want me to say it worse?" And I always go back to that story, which is like, I said it. That's the poem. That's the best I can do. I'll say it worse if you want, but that's it. That's what you get, And I think there's a lot of truth to that, too. It's like, I'm not Bob Dylan. I'm not going to say, I wrote the song, figure it out for yourself. I mean, I'm much more engaged in these conversations, and I'm really interested in them. But it's a good thing to keep in your pocket, that you don't always have to explain your work. You just have to make your work. It will eventually find something. I remember somebody saying to me in graduate school, "You'll find an audience for your work if you keep making it." I don't know what the audience will be. It may not be MoMA. It may not be this or that or one thing or the other, but you will find an audience. Just keep making your work. So that was more than anything. I learned other things in grad school, but that was the big picture thing I learned. And from Steve and John, and continue to from Robert Adams, is that thing, that practice and process over product and selling it.
That's there's a lot of pressure. Yeah, I go back to one of those things. You had so many great things in there. I'm like taking notes, but. No, for the first one, I want to ask you about is quiet, and then the next thing is, I want to ask you, not more like say a statement, more or less, this idea behind someone that takes one idea and then plays that out for a lifetime versus people that jump from one to the other,
right?
And I think I'm like you. I agree a little bit, but I also disagree. And part of the reason why I agree is, like, right now we live in this Instagram world, this social media world. Everything's so instant, and there's so much pressure to make every single day and do every single day, and to diversify what you have and to do this and do that. And you can't help but feel like you're schizophrenic in some ways. So Absolutely. Just taking one idea and you can run in with that, it makes a lot more sense. But at the exact same time, I disagree in the fact that I've changed so much, and I feel like I've been so many different people as I have different parts of my lives and different chapters, that if I stayed with one idea, I wouldn't be acknowledging the person I am today,
Mm-hmm.
and what I think about today. And so, like, I think that is also important. Thoughts on that? Is that kind of where you were?
And I think, of course. I mean, it's everybody has to find their own way of working, and I'm not saying I don't have different ideas, but a similar way of working, a similar way of thinking about my work. Like, for instance, I mean, Stephen Shore is somebody who he's very restless, and he does an idea and then he's got to try something else. So he finished Instagram, he signed off. I'm not going to do Instagram anymore. I'm going to find the next thing. And he's very much into technology. He wants to show, different things. He did drone pictures. I thought, yeah, those are nice. I mean, they look like Stephen Shore drone pictures. Amazing. But I mean, he tries different things. And if you went to the MoMA show, oh my God, I mean, he had so many projects from his early years, like conceptual projects. And I think he did a thing for the, what was that called? Those viewfinder things that had pictures of the Grand Canyon, Viewmaster things. I think he did something like that, and he had his Mickey Mouse camera called a Micmatic, and everything was
Yeah.
everything in that show. And he tried so many different things, and he was always moving on, mastering
Wow.
different mediums and different styles, although there's a consistency. But if you look at somebody, I don't know, John Davola does these different projects, right? But I mean, I think there's a consistency there to his approach. Dogs chasing my car in the desert, isolated houses in the desert, how far I could run, that one, it's like physical feats and different things like that he sees as he's into the photographic challenge, like what can a camera do, not do, and what's a photograph, what's real, what's not real. He makes things and photographs them, but I'm thinking more like it's not something you could prove true or not true. I just think that maybe for me, and you're absolutely right that it's a time where you feel very restless and very battered by everything that's coming at you, especially if you're a younger photographer and you don't have kind of a center of gravity yet. And that's scary. And I'd say the equivalent of what I'm saying, or another way of looking at it, would be to say that, at least don't look at too big of a picture. Look right in front of you and make the project that you're making now, and put the other stuff away. Because I think when you've been around a while, I would say most photographers I know have at least 2, 3, 4 projects going in various states. One may be just notes, one may be just in their head, but have a few things going, because that way at least you write them down, you have some notes, maybe you have some pictures, put it away, and kind of focus on what you're focused on, and try to be still that way, because otherwise you get pulled all different directions and you never get anything done, right? So it's the bane of the photographer, even when it was just film, but especially digital, to have so many more pictures than you know how to deal with. So you got to put some of those aside, and you got to work on the idea that's most central to you, even if it's just a practice. I'm going to go out every day and I'm going to photograph for this whole year. Every day I'm going to go out and make something. Or I'm going to make a photograph every Friday. That's my day in the studio. And I don't know. I'm blabbering now. I think that what I'm trying to get at is just a way to say, find out what interests you the most, regardless of what the style is of the time, and just make that work for the moment. Be in that moment. Yeah. Like if it's summer, make a summer project and don't think about the other stuff, and stay focused on a single idea. It doesn't have to be for your life. It's true. It could be just for 2 weeks, but you're in it, and then you're in the zone for a little while.
You weren't blabbering at all. You were actually you're giving great examples of how each individual thing could be true in different cases, right. And it seems so very individualistic. And so I guess it's really just finding your own rhythm, mm-hmm. and kind of working with your own rhythm and your own tone, and finding out what that is, and just staying true to yourself. The other thing is, what I'm quite curious about is this idea of quiet, a quiet image. Yeah. What do you mean by that?
Well, I learned I start to think about that first when I was a grad student. Just this what I mean by it is an image that doesn't immediately or ever really quite announce itself. It doesn't show an intent necessarily. It doesn't show off. It's not loud. It's quiet. What it expresses is subtle. But I have to say, it became clearer for me through an essay that Jerry Badger wrote called, I can't remember what it's called, The Art That Doesn't Show Its Hand, The Genius of the Quiet Photographer, or something like that. And the way he described it, and I think this is where it became clear for me, this goes back a number of years when the essay was first published, was the art that doesn't show its hand. And I was just explaining, I was talking to my students about this in the Photo 2 class, and I could see a couple of them almost like, I don't have any idea what you're talking about. And what I was trying to explain to them was a quiet photograph is like a photograph that doesn't show its hand. So in other words, you're not looking at it going, wow, how do you do that? It's not, in other words, moonrise over Half Dome, probably not a quiet photograph. No. That dramatic sky, no, that's never going to be quiet. Ansel Adams made some quiet photographs. They're not the most famous ones, but he did. But I would say it's the kind of photograph that you look at, and it would certainly be Robert Adams. It would be maybe some Lee Friedlander, some of his photographs. It would be Stephen Shore, the landscape photographs, common places, things like that. You know, they're not giant in scale. They're not, they're the color, if their color is not muted, but very controlled and very controlled. And in black and white, we're talking about a photograph. It wouldn't be a super high contrast photograph. It wouldn't be an extreme close-up. It wouldn't be a drone picture or an aerial picture. It'd probably be something at a somewhat human perspective, vantage point. And the subject would be quiet as well. In other words, not quite announcing what's so special about this. So it's a picture that I think can God, I wish I could just reach over and get that book, but it's actually on my. I keep most of my books at school.
You're doing a great job. I think you're doing a great job. I'm actually hanging with you here. I look at a lot of photography, so like I know what you mean. I'm literally seeing images go through where actually meet that description right away. Mm-hmm. And I think what I like about it is the subtlety. At first glance, you kind of just see it, but then you look a little closer. And there's a little bit more that makes it actually stand out to you. We were discussing an image from a previous episode with Sasha Rudinsky, and she was talking about this one image where it's this faceless child and this like homeless dog and this big ad of a Range Rover. But it kind of seems like it's real, but it's not. But if you're flipping through this in an album or something, you were flipping through this in a book, you probably wouldn't stop at it unless you were like diving in a little bit more and you go, this is a perfect metaphor for how she feels about this place. These two worlds that are kind of seem to be at odds with each other. Mm-hmm. It's not right away obvious. Right. It's not slapping you in the face irony.
Yeah, exactly.
But it's right there. That's what you mean by a quiet image. Okay. I love that.
More or less. That's what I mean.
Go ahead.
Yeah. That's what I mean. That's what I mean. And it could be a lot of things, but that's what I'm getting at. It's you're not showing your hand. It's not like a trying to think of a great image that's like that. I would say Tim Carpenter's photographs are quiet. Maybe as a book, something else is revealed. The repeat and the similar images and things in certain books like Local Objects, but his photographs are quiet. They're space. They're just spaces. Sometimes there's not even an apparent subject. It's a mark on the road. Not everybody would see that as a valuable subject, but it's not. It's also when you look at them in context that they have more meaning, but also by studying them, by seeing them over and over. Maybe it'll hit you one day. This photograph is pulling me in for some reason. I mean, the photographs we love to look at over and over again are the ones we can't ever completely sum up in words, and that's why they're good. Anything that you could, for instance, okay, here's an example. I think Stephen Shore used this himself. The famous picture that he did of a billboard that's has a landscape, and then there's a landscape in the background. I can't remember what's on the billboard, but it's a landscape. It's totally ironic. And as he said, I think I saw him in some interview, and he said, like, that's something that any photographer would stop for. It's like, that's an easy one. So that's, to me, not a quiet picture, because it's obvious that the subject matter was central here. And that's fine in a group of photographs. But then other of his pictures, a parking lot, Like, why are we looking at that? Well, it's not the subject matter. It's the time of day. It's the atmosphere and the lamp that's on it, like dawn or something. And it's a feeling of a place rather than a built irony or anything like that. So yeah, usually irony isn't real loud if there is any. And, again, there are certain people who do that over and over again. And I think that's what I aim for. I just want to make pictures that are beautiful, but they're beautiful because they show beauty where there is an obvious beauty, I guess, would be another way, using the terminology that Robert Adams uses so well in terms of beauty in photography, is, a beauty in the order that you can find in the world, that you can make something that's not really anything and make it into a photograph that has meaning. That's still my very old-fashioned idea. Yeah.
There's some things I think in image making. I don't like the old fashioned idea, but I don't think it's old fashioned at all. I think it's one of those things. It's like one of those truths that can't be not proven. It just keeps proving itself over and over and over again. I think you just kind of nailed that. And so now I'm kind of curious a little bit about your images. You share with me a little bit about who was influential with you, and I really appreciated kind of breaking down some of those things that you said, because I've heard these things from people before, but I just wanted to kind of see where you stood on that, because definitions and words mean different things, and now we get to kind of look at some of your images, and so you're going to show us some of your newer work. Your older work when you were kind of doing some photography in the New York rock punk scene, I guess. Mm-hmm. And then we're going to kind of go through that little transition where you leave that, and then we're going to show kind of where you start to teach, and then you kind of start doing more, start making your own books and start doing all these other things. So I'm kind of curious to kind of jump in and get a feel for some of that. So we can go ahead and share your screen, and we can start taking a look at some of those images now.
Sounds good. You should be able to see Anya and Roxy, Max's Kansas City, 1976. This was the first picture I made that I felt like was just transcendent. I mean, this picture, when I shot these two girls at Max's Kansas City, and I was a nervous wreck doing it because I was scared of them. I was just out of college, and I thought I was even probably, I don't know what I thought their age was, probably about the same age, but they just looked fierce. And I had a flash that wasn't working, and then finally it worked, and I got a few shots off. And one was of the two of them, and one was of this woman on the left, Anya Phillips. And I was excited about that. And at the end of the evening, that was during a Ramones show. They were Ramones fans. And I went right back to the studio I was working at, my boss's photo studio on 31st Street, Madison Avenue. And I went right back and developed that film, and I waited till it dried, and I made contact prints, and I made 11 by 14s in the dark room so that I could show him when he came in first thing in the morning. And I was just like, this is a good photograph. I like this. There's something about this, it's rich. You could see the detail of their faces, the way she's looking at me, her jacket open, the cheap leather that Anya's wearing, everything about it, I liked. So that was a breakthrough. And, again, it was about shooting a subject. I still was like trying to figure out everything about this work.
Yeah, I'm also curious, how did you get into shooting the New York rock scene? Did people just start inviting you, or did you just start showing? How did you get into it?
It was really easy. I was extremely shy at that time, and really had a hard time talking to people. But I when I was in college, I started listening to some of this stuff, and Patti Smith, particularly the Ramones, the Modern Lovers, Velvet Underground. We were listening to in college, a little bit in high school actually, to Bowie and Lou Reed and stuff. And so when I went home, I immediately started going to New York City. My parents lived on Long Island. I was staying with them, but I immediately started going to shows and brought my camera. And people wanted to be photographed because it was a scene it was a visual scene as well as a musical scene. And people wanted to, at least most people, not only weren't afraid to be in pictures. This was 1977 or something, or 6. So it was very different in terms of people being in pictures. There was no social media. There was no giant fear of this going online or, what are you going to do with it? It was basically like, what can you do with it, really, right? So it was all pretty easy to do. And then if they were famous, then it was even easier sometimes because they were like, well, they know they're famous. They don't mind being photographed. So often, I usually asked people to photograph them. I kind of like doing that better. But once in a while, I also just photographed what I saw. And so this is Alex Chilton, who I knew who he was, and I just walked up to him. I said, hey, I like your music. Can I make a picture? And I don't know. We talked for a while that evening. I don't think I saw him perform a few times. I really liked him. But that was the only time I photographed him, sort of unofficially at CBGB's. And again, a picture I still like. It's a picture I still feel like, okay, yeah, that was a good picture. How I did it, I don't know. I was basically just filling the frame in any way I could. Blondie. Probably here I was trying to just fit everybody in. But when I look at it now, I think of it as this arrangement of people that actually worked pretty good. And I don't think I was aware of the seediness of the light, just that there wasn't much of it. Debbie rehearsing and empty stage. I was very much into photographing the details too. I don't know who this person was, but photographing the people who were around. One of these photographers got in touch with me after my book came out and wanted a picture. This guy all the way to the right over here wrote me, and he's like a TV producer, and he bought a print of this image.
Oh wow!
This is a guy named Michael. Listen, I can't remember. Michael Spider something. Anyway, he was in a band called Pure Hell, which I only found out after the book came out because his this guy has died, and his sister called me. Michael Sanders, and he was in a band called Pure Hell. So look him up if you want to hear what Pure Hell sounds like, I would say. I was photographing people at the Chelsea Hotel. I was meeting people, and they'd say, "Oh, you should come here. You should photograph this. We know these girls. You should photograph them. Bring your camera." It was that kind of thing. Photographing the scene. And this is a writer named Victor Bacchus. Andy Warhol's in the background. This wasn't a picture I set up. Another one of Andy.
Oh my gosh! Wow.
There's like the.
So are you at this point like, are people starting to see these images and it's just inviting you, or are you just kind of like showing up and?
Yeah, I mean, I'm around. Yeah, I knew a lot of people by what is this, 1978? By 78, 79, I already met a lot of people. I'd already done a couple of record jackets, and I was working for this publication called New York Rocker that was, I got very little money, but it had a lot of integrity, I think. And a couple other publications making a little money here and there. But I knew a lot of people. I didn't know Andy Warhol and Lou Reed, but I was good friends with David Johansen here. This was his show. And so I was just backstage hanging out, making pictures. And there comes Andy and Lou, or or maybe they were in there, and I didn't usually take this kind of picture. Like, I thought, oh, this is kind of, publicity shot, but it isn't really, not this one. And so I'm so glad I did to get them, to have them lined up like that, and that great flash, and Andy's hand and camera, the recorder and everything. So, it was very intriguing for me. And it was really fun. And I felt like I was part of something bigger than anything I'd been a part of. I had a sense that this was important. The music scene was important, and that it should be recorded in every way, not just musically, but visually. And so that's what I did for about, I was there 10 years in New York just doing this. This is 1980. Started working for Joe Jackson through his record company. And then he'd come back to America, and I'd usually photograph him again. Did it a few times. A couple of his record jackets and publicity photographs. I made, making a little bit of money here and there, but I always had to do other work. I never made enough doing this, and I was never ambitious enough to make a lot of money doing it. So that's why eventually I figured out this wasn't, New York was great. I'm glad I did it, but it wasn't going to be my life photographing these bands. So at some point, this woman, Maria Del Greco, I'm still in touch with now and again. She's so sweet. I didn't even know her when I took this picture. I thought she looked great. I said, "Can I take your picture?" She was like, "Sure." And I took her picture. We became friendly over the years. And of course we lost touch, but we got back in touch a while back now, at least 10, 15, 20 years ago. And, she'll comment on my Instagram, and I'll see her Instagrams. And she ended up doing celebrity photography for a while and was pretty successful at it. Now she's back to being a designer. Elliot Murphy, who maybe you know from Paris.
Yeah.
Bigger in Paris than he is in New York. And I did see Elliot when my first book came out. He came and bought a copy. It was really sweet. We went out, had a coffee, and so yeah, he's an expat, and I always liked him. Another Long Islander. He grew up in not that far from me, where I grew up. David Johansen. Anyway, so, I did this work for a while, and in 1986, I got married, and at the same time, I decided that, no, I didn't decide that. We lost our apartment. It was a sublet, and we were asked to vacate after 4 years, after I had it for 4 years, because you couldn't do that. You had to live, if you sublet an apartment, you had to live in it for 2 years out of 4. And so my landlord lost the sublet, and I lost the apartment, and we left New York City. And it was really a good move. Tom Waits, one of my favorites. Robert Gordon, the late, great Robert Gordon. So many of these people are gone, not John. John's still around. Run DMC.
It's interesting. I'm always curious about, I think at that moment you almost have a time capsule of the music scene there, and so I think that is interesting. How influential was that on you? What did it teach you, and about you and your photography? And I know you gave me some tips before, as far as like from some people that helped you along or in that process. Mm-hmm. What's your big takeaway from that time?
I learned how to be a photographer. I learned that I didn't want to do work for hire if I could avoid that. I didn't feel competent at it, but it's also because it's not what I wanted to do. I wanted to be able to make mistakes. I wanted to be able to have a roll of film not come out and not be devastated by it. And I just, being a photographer in that scene and being part of that scene, they don't work together that well in terms of like your technique. You know what I mean? It's kind of like if you're part of this scene that's so full of chaos and abuse, you're trying to make pictures that are clear. And somehow I did make a number of pictures that I think are clear. But I certainly look back and think, man, if I went back now, I'd kill it. I should have done that and that and that. And that. So, I don't know. I learned a lot, but I learned a lot what not to do, and I learned a lot about who I was. I think as a person, I learned who not to be with, and who I didn't want around me. I learned a lot about the music business, that I didn't like it. And that, the musicians were musicians and the artists were artists. The musicians were interested in our work as far as they were in it. Otherwise, they're not really. Most of them couldn't care less about what I did. It was more about what I did that had them involved. So, ego got to me probably. And I was like, I want to do photographs that are my photographs, not my photographs of somebody else. And, so I learned that was really clear. And I learned, I learned that, that I should change. And that was, getting married was a huge change. Leaving New York City was a huge change. And, we did it. We never looked back. It was a great move. And, so glad I got out of there, because it is a tough place to live in. And, in a sense, it's much safer now, but it's also, it's dangerous, right, these days, but much safer than it used to be, but much less interesting and much more unjust in terms of economically and socially. The rich are just so wealthy in New York, and the poor are just worse than ever. So glad I got out. I don't know. Yeah, there's probably so many lessons from that time that I can't even untangle them. But that's the best I can do. I learned a lot of what not to do, and I learned a lot about people.
So talk to me about that transition. So you were like, okay, I'm leaving, and you're shooting out of there like a bat out of hell. I'm just kidding. That's what I've heard, growing up.
Yeah,
getting out of here, But you're leaving there, and you where did you end up? Was it then you became a teacher, or talk to me a little bit about what you were up to until you kind of landed?
No, we took a huge gamble, and we moved to a little town called Tivoli, New York, which was ended up, that's where Stephen Shore lived. And although I didn't meet him till I went to Bard, but that's how we met my good friend Peter Hutton and a few other people. My wife and I did a journal for a while because we didn't have any way of making friends. We were like a couple, and we didn't have kids, so how do you meet people? And we didn't have local jobs. My wife commuted to New York. It was only about 90 minutes. And she did editing jobs in New York. She's a journalist and editor, and now she works at home. Then it would have been ideal. It would have been like the natural thing. But anyway, so we didn't have that local connection. We did a journal for about 2 years called Satori, and in the journal we found an artist in the Mid-Hudson Valley, that area of New York, and interviewed them. Did a Q&A. And she was a journalist, so she taught me how to do that. We worked on them together. I did photographs. We got other people's art and poetry. It was always 20 pages long. I learned more about printing, offset printing, by doing that, and used a Mac. We used a Mac Plus to make the magazine, so the screen, about that big, and it was a great experience. But we met a lot of people. That's when I went to Bard. A few years after getting there, I applied to Bard. My friend Peter encouraged me and wrote for me, and it helped. And so I started going to Bard, and that's when a whole other world opened up for me. That was like so important, because I thought I was going to get credentials so I could teach. I mean, I wouldn't have been a teacher then. I wasn't a teacher then. I couldn't have been a teacher then, but I thought I could. I thought, I have all this experience doing these punk pictures, and everybody likes them, and this will be great. I had so much to learn. As always, right? You learn what you don't know a little bit at a time, and so I went to school. I met Shore, and Ann Turin was there too, photographer, and they brought photographers in. Papa George came, and who else was? I can't remember who we had. Some good people. Anyway, started learning about the photography world and the art world and the bigger, the thing I'd missed in New York, being part of the punk scene. Even though I'd go to galleries and museums once in a while, that wasn't what I was doing most of the time. I didn't have the money really most of the time to do that. I mean, galleries, yes, but not museums. Anyway, so I'd go sometimes, but I was learning about the world I'd missed, and the world that was out there, and the world of possibilities, and so much about photography, so much I didn't know. I'd used a view camera briefly in high school, but I didn't know anything about that. So I learned some technique. I learned how to print black and white properly. I learned, those kinds of things. And I learned how to teach, I guess, a little bit, by watching my teachers and taking that in. So I finished that program in 3 years and started applying for jobs. I taught 1 year at a community college, a job I got through Tanya Marcuse, who was teaching there at the time and lived nearby. I met her, and she hired me, and then I got a job the next year teaching in Missouri for 3 years. And we went out to Southwest Missouri, Springfield, and that was culture shock. That was amazing. My wife's from Memphis, but this was not Memphis. This was like evangelical. It was very close to Tulsa, and very, very, very religious, conservative area. University wasn't, but they had to kind of bend toward the church when they had to. But it's a big university, big art department. Learned a ton there. Taught 6 classes a year, 3 and 3. Each class 3 hours and 20 minutes, 3 hours 50 minutes. Really long, BFA program. Learned how to teach a little bit for real classes, and taught everything there: black and white, color, advanced, all sorts of stuff. And then I started doing my work more seriously. It got more and more developed. I did the color work out there in the prairies, and after 3 years, it was a 3-year gig originally, and then they had So I was getting ready to leave, and we had decided to move to Portland, Maine, because I didn't get a job coming out of Missouri. I went to the conferences, and it was next to impossible, and I didn't have that much experience at that time. So we moved to Portland, Maine. I did some teaching at the Maine College of Art, continuing studies, and my wife did some journalism, and then she got a full-time job at the Alternative Weekly. And then I started getting adjunct work, and I got some work teaching. Then I got a full-time gig for 3-4 years, I think, there, non-tenure. I taught around the state. I taught at an artist in residency at a community college for a year. I taught at Bates and Bowdoin as a sabbatical replacement. I taught at the Maine workshops, which are on the coast, 1 semester. And then I got the job at Colby College, which is in Waterville, Maine, central Maine, 2007. And boy, was I ready for it, because I don't know what else I would have done. I'd really exhausted all the local possibilities, but I wanted to stay in Maine. We wanted to stay in Maine. And this job came up, and at the time it was part-time. I'm like, I'm going for it. I'm going to build the program. I felt like this job was for me. I went all out. I got the job, and I built the program up, and it became full-time, not that long.
That's awesome.
And I've been teaching there, for 17 years, I think. And I just announced my retirement, so I'm going to leave after another year of teaching.
What?
Yeah. I look so young, I know, but yeah, I'm getting not because I don't want to make work, but because I'm finished teaching. And
so you're doing all of that, but you're also making work at the same time. You're photographing and you're doing things. What are the subjects that you find yourself kind of exploring? Are they ideas? Are they what were you? What were you taking photographs of?
Yeah.
At that time?
That's a good question. Yeah, because when I went to Missouri after grad school, I got that job. Well, a year after grad school, I got that job. And in grad school, I'd been making these color photographs of fields and meadows. Very simple, very much influenced probably by Stephen, but certainly, I tried to make my own. And so when I went to Missouri, I photographed. I thought the prairie's perfect for me. I was so intrigued by this idea of prairie. I'd never been to the prairie, and it's amazing.
So romantic.
I was like, what? The prairie? I read all about it. It just seemed exhilarating. There won't be another gas station for another, make sure your car's filled up. And, I love this idea of being out there. The first time, we went to Kansas as a trip one summer before I moved out there. I went to photograph the Kansas prairie. And then when I was in Missouri, I photographed Missouri prairie, Kansas, South Dakota. And then I went to Nebraska to the Sandhills for a month. We stayed at a little ranch, a ranch house on a ranch that nobody had lived in for a while. It was like a 50s pink ranch. It was really weird, but cool. And we were in the middle of, and I was just making landscapes of the prairie, pretty much just, they were very much, most of them just grass and sky, most of them. And I did that for the whole time I was there. Toward the end of my time in Missouri, I bought a 6x7 Fuji camera and started photographing black and white again, too. And when I got to Maine, I tried photographing in color, and it just wasn't happening, and I wasn't into it. I was tired of it. And so many people then were photographing in color. It had just gone crazy. It wasn't just like Sternfeld and, and Shore and whatever. It was like everybody. And I just decided to go back to black and white. I just liked it. I liked working with it better. It was like this existential dilemma for me. I used to talk to my shrink all about this. Like, should I photograph in color? Like, what did she know? But it was like we talked about it because it was such a big thing. I felt like I was denying something by not working in color. Like, I'm not working in color because I don't want to color correct. I'm not working in color because this or that, or I'm not working. And it's like, I finally decided I don't care what my work is, if it's good or not. I'm not working in color now. And that's just the way it is. And I'm going to make black and white pictures now. It's a new challenge. And so that's what I did. So once I got to Maine, after a little bit, I started working in black and white photographing. Tried to photograph the ocean like as if it were the prairie, because there's always that people talk about the prairie as an ocean of grass when the settlers crossed the country, and it didn't work. And then there was also at the time Hiroshi Sugimoto had already made that work. So what can you do? You can't do it better than Sugimoto. You could do other things, but still. So I started photographing the landscape, and I'll tell you where the exact moment when I had it's kind of like an epiphany when things shifted for me. I got a job. I was teaching part-time at University of Southern Maine. I think I was working as a technician too, phototech, and teaching a class or two. And I was teaching at Bates College. I also got a job teaching at the workshops in Rockport. So every week I left my job on I think it was like Wednesday at USM, went straight up to Rockport. It was about 2 hours, stayed at a little motel they put me up at, a little dive that the owner owned, and taught the next day, and then would drive home and then go back to USM. And I decided, because the drive was long, that I was going to stop along the way. It was a 2-hour drive. I thought I'd stop about halfway, find a place, and every week photograph it on the way up and on the way back. I just decided that I'd do that. And that would be my project. And I stopped at this place that looked interesting, a scrubby little field. And I call this landscape diary number 1. And that gave me the structure I needed. And it gave me the permission to make any pictures I wanted as long as they were there. And what a revelation it was for me. It freed me up to make pictures again. And all I had to do was shoot that film every week, a roll on the way up, usually a roll on the way down, all 6x7. No, I 4x5 too. And then develop it, and then look at it that week if I could, and then go back up and collect it. And I did 3 of these landscape diaries on 3 different routes teaching. And the work was important to me. I don't know, it has not been published. It has been shown here and there, but it's quietly sitting in the archive. But that work was transformative for me. It gave me the permission I needed to continue making the work I wanted to make and not worry about it. And from there, it grew. I can't remember what the next project was, but I think I started making these big tree pictures, and 8x10. I got an 8x10 camera and started making tree pictures. And it just goes like that, one to the other. But that was a huge, you think of those linchpins, those places where things shifted, and that was definitely one when I made those pictures, and I figured out how to create a structure for myself to have a practice. Because you talk about all those years teaching and struggling, it was hard to have a practice that was consistent.
Yeah.
And it's hard for me to work when I don't feel settled settled in. I mean, it could be settled in for a week, but I got to be settled in somewhere. And I never felt that for a long time. I didn't feel.
Yeah.
Now, then I did. So, yeah.
That's interesting. Well, and I've looked at a little bit of your work, and it's wonderful. You can check out his website, and you can kind of click through some of these. I don't think I saw that one on the website. It's in the archive, you said.
I think some of it is.
It is. Oh, okay.
Maybe one group.
Okay. Yours, like you said, 3.
Yeah,
so I was like
3 landscape diaries I made, and
yeah,
I'd like to put them together at some point. That would be nice.
Yeah. I think that would be. Well, you said a book is important to you, so maybe this is the next book idea.
It would be a book.
But but you are working on a book right now,
right?
And so let's kind of take a look at a little bit of that, and we'll kind of take a look at your visual language, and this is current. So this is, you've been teaching for years. Now that I find out you're retiring after one more year, so you're facing retirement, but you've had all this time to practice and develop it, and so I'm kind of curious to see what you're working on. So let's take a look at that really quick.
Okay.
This is kind of a little look into this book. This is your latest book. This should be, at the time of recording this, it's still, you're still working on it, and it should be ready for print by May. So I think when people actually view this, it'll probably be either close to being out or one of the things, right?
Yeah, I think we're supposed to introduce it at, we'll either introduce it at ICP in the fall in September, or at Perry Photo definitely in November. Well, this project is particular and is different than any other one. It represents about 15 years of work. I started it when similar to the landscape diaries I was talking about. I started it when when I first got the job at Colby, and I wanted to explore Waterville, this little town I'm living in, or little city, and I started photographing again, just to find my footing. I think that's what this was about. Just like the diaries, just like the prairie, just about everything I do is kind of like trying to find my footing, or trying to find where I fit into this place. Visually or intellectually or physically somehow, but trying to learn by asking questions, I guess. And by questions, I make photographs. So I started this in 2007 or 2008, and it's become many different projects. It was landscapes. It was what I call terrain vague. And there are several groups of work existing in this one book. One are these landscapes that I call terrain vague being sort of the edge of the cities, the sort of disorganized parts, the little abandoned lots that you find at the edge of cities where you go from city to rural, maybe, or city to suburban, or sub-rural, or, all these different terms we could use. And then it became about the city. It's, the buildings, the old buildings. It's a river town that had hit hard times. It's never was a wealthy town, but it was very active when logging, forestry, and manufacturing cloth and mills were very popular in Maine. And once that ended, the jobs left. And, even when they came back a little bit, then there was the recession of 2008 right after I got here, really. And so it's a town that has hard times. And our college, our president, is trying to help restore some of it. A lot of new building and a lot of renovations and things like that. It's got its nice parts. So putting this together as a book was nearly impossible. It's, like I said, it's hundreds, thousands of images that I made over many, many years without a particular purpose other than that they were about this place. And I felt like I had to make something, of that work. It's like, so much of our photography as photographers sits in boxes, and that's a shame. There's a lot of good work out in the world. Look at Vivian Mayer, right? That whole group of work discovered she never really produced or put it out there in the world. So I felt like I had to make something of this work that I was doing now that I can make photo books. And it took me a long time, years of doing other projects and having this up on my studio wall, like about 100 or more little, say like 3 by 4.5 inch prints all over my pinups, all over the place, and taking up the entire wall. And I had a couple curators come in, look at it, give me some ideas, but I just finally had to dive in and start, throwing some of these prints aside and making something. And so I finally made this book. It didn't have a name. I finally came up with Almost Home because that's a term that's so kind of like tenuous. I mean, you're almost home, but you're not home, and maybe you never are. But almost home means a lot of things for me. It means this place is almost like home. It means I'm almost home, I'm almost there, and maybe the city's almost back. The city, that work's almost done, almost home, and then, of course, almost home meaning, our final journey, wherever that is, whatever that is. As I get older, that's something I think about, certainly, my mortality. And so that's what this is called. And I try to put it into a place that I felt I could let go of it. And it's still a very difficult project for me, but I think I've gotten it to a place I like. I have to because this is going to be made now. So it starts with this quote, and this quote is from a poem called "Read the Signs" by Patrick Donnelly. And Patrick was a poet, lives in Massachusetts, but he taught up here a number of semesters. I got to know him a little bit, and he wrote this poem about Waterville, about his time here, and it's a very moving poem. And I could have used the whole thing in a way, but it's more personal than I would like to get at. And it would be too much. But I thought this little couplet would say a lot. So I'll just read it here. The brightness that caught the eye by the river was only a marble in the grass, a wish-fulfilling jewel I put in my pocket. So, it tells you a lot of things. It's a river. A river is nearby, so probably the river is important. The brightness that caught the eye by the river was only a marble in the grass, so it wasn't what one would think. But at the same time, a wish-fulfilling jewel I put in my pocket. So very modest, a modest take, right? The thing that caught my eye by the river was only a marble in the grass. Again, we're getting back to the quietness of looking closely, of looking carefully, of looking at the same places again and again and again, and photographing the same places again and again and again. I mean, this is a long time for me to be making a body of work that isn't strictly, like, say, a documentary. It's just making work. Making work. It's my practice. Some of the work was made during the pandemic. Some of the important work here was made during the pandemic, and I'll point some of that out. I would take walks with my camera, like I think a lot of photographers did. And I would do mine. I would just finish one roll of film. That was my concept. Shoot a roll of 120, really modest, and head home. So sometimes I'd be far away by the time I finished the roll, or sometimes I'd head back and finish the roll then. But I always finished the roll. It's not hard to do. And develop it and start putting it together as a book. So, so that's what this is about. This used to be a sign that you would see from the highway at the exit. You'd get off for Waterville. So almost home. It meant the seafood restaurant was almost home. It meant you were almost home. It's a little inside joke, but it's also kind of a little, it kind of works. Sure. Now, then there was no restaurant in the next pictures. I didn't include all of them, but I did make them. No restaurant, and then eventually no seafood sign either. But I didn't want to be too literal.
Wow. You said you did this over 10 years?
15 years. 15 or 16.
15 years, okay.
Yeah, I mean, the latest picture is 2014, so I think I'm going to stop. I started photographing interiors too, empty interiors, particularly places that had been long closed, and I found ways to get in and made my way. So the book has this kind of prologue, I would call it, whereas these shots, there's no title yet except for the cover. We didn't see the cover. I'm not showing you the cover. It's not really complete until there's going to be a photograph tipped in, and it's going to be on paper, beautiful green paper that is part vegetable, 20% vegetable matter or something like that. Anyway, it's a nice paper. And so what I would have wouldn't look like that anyway. So I didn't show you that. So you saw the first page of the book, and then there's this prologue, and then it gets to the title page, Almost Home. And so these landscapes were more or less like terrain vague, these places that are in flux, nothing much going on, except everything,
That's fascinating.
And this is the first section, which I don't announce as sections, but you'll see how they work. So then I put a picture on the left.
You live here.
Yeah.
Yeah, and this is Waterville.
Yeah.
Yeah, what a name, huh?
Mm-hmm.
Water.
It comes from the river.
It's
from the river.
Yeah. Well, it makes sense. But it's interesting. And so you've been here 15 years. You're teaching at Colby College. You're exploring this space and this place. When you go back through the archive itself, or when you go back thugh these images,
mm-hmm.
What is the thing that is the overarching feeling that you get?
Yeah.
What are you noticing?
Yeah. Well, it in the beginning of the book, I think I hope what you would notice is a certain emptiness, a certain sadness, a certain melancholic sense of change. Not good change, just change. Something's happened, right? It's everything's dark, everything's complex, dense, empty, right? So, it's about that. It's about that. It's about a sense of hopelessness, but not completely, I hope. And then it shifts a little bit. And then it gets a little more specific about what's going on, I would think. So I have this, I put a picture to the left so that the right page is empty, and that indicates very subtly a new section. And there's really 3 sections in the prologue, but I don't call them that in the book. There's very little text in this book. I don't want to talk about Waterville. I don't want it to be about Waterville, though it is certainly about that. It's about anywhere. It's about the necessity of things dying so that things can grow. It's about how we treat our landscapes, how we design them or don't design them, and it's about looking closely at the world around us, paying close attention. And this is what I see. This was a tough little town, and this is what I found.
What's interesting about a lot of this stuff is we don't really design them not to be used, and so when they're empty, it's almost eerie.
Mm-hmm.
And there's another part to it too. It's that you said this could be anywhere, and I think you're right on about that. I've been into small towns like this where either the industry is no longer there, and it's either some kind of factory town or whatever.
Yep.
But there are people still there, but there's really nothing there. The young people are not there anymore, and it is characterized by these empty parking lots.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
It was meant for hundreds of people,
Right.
But yet, where are these people? Yeah.
They're ghosts. Their ghosts are here. That's how I see. There are ghosts in these spaces.
Yeah.
Everywhere. I agree.
I love when you get into the interior too.
Yeah, the interior, and I hope the interiors, in a sense that mirror the idea of being interior. You're moving inside, and these places, this basketball and a chair that God knows when that was last moved or used, or this chair I just love so much. It's just kind of like a Greek statue or something. And these empty buildings.
Good analogy.
Don't you think that Greek?
Yeah,
I see.
Yeah, it's got the wet drape.
Anyway, the drape.
The wet drapery effect. Wonderful.
Exactly.
It's so classic. Yeah. Classic Rome. Classic Greek. I'm just kidding. But I think what's interesting too is you're also seeing, you have these abandoned places, but you're also you were talking about it also, this place trying to reinvent itself. So it's tearing down some of these old places and putting up new places. And I think that's really interesting. I love this pair. This is a nice one.
Yeah, I just came late this came like, maybe 3 weeks ago. I saw the picture on, I keep running into pictures in the archive thinking, why did I put that one in? But at this point I've promised the number of pages, and I'm sticking to it. It's 80 pages plus the cover, and that's enough too. That's a good amount. And I like books that you could look at, to say in one sitting. I mean, you could look at any book in one sitting, but you know what I mean? It's not too long so that you could maybe look at it twice, page by page. It's not so long that you can't go through it. And I like this pair too. I'm glad you said that, because I do. Somehow it works. And I have enough construction pictures to fill another book, but I don't think it'd be a good book. But I made so many pictures of construction. I really got into that, and I think I included two.
I'm thinking about that poem, and I'm thinking about these images, that line from a poem.
Yeah.
And it's like, I'm thinking about that thing you put in your pocket as a keepsake. What do you see? Yeah. Why do you feel like that line in particular resonates so much with this series? Because
there's so little, and all you can have is like maybe a small promise of something better. You find a little marble and you put it in your pocket. It's not a diamond ring. It's not a jewel, but it's modest. It's something, and you find it by actually looking. And so there's something about that. It's a great metaphor. It moves me, like a lot of that poem does. But that, if I had to pick two lines, I thought those were the best, because, that's about what you find. You're not going to find, probably $100 in the grass. You're probably going to find a marble at best. And And the marble, is the light. To me, that's the light. And ultimately, when this book changes is when the light gets more positive. Because light's always important, right? I mean, it's all we got. The light in this picture is very important. The shadows, but it changes when, as you'll see, when you get to that light. So Kennedy's important to me. This is a Catholic church, and obviously it's important to them. There are no people in this book. There's one living creature, as was pointed out by Gianluca Gambarini, one of the publishers. He said, "Do you know there's no people, but there's a cat?" Just saying. And I said, "Yeah, I know." Because I don't usually have pictures of people unless they're portraits. But I do have her. I see her as a symbol of a person, really. As you go from this picture to that picture, and then that picture. The pandemic, this picture on the left. And if you look close, there's a cross back there showing over the trees. We have a lot of churches in this town, as you might guess. This is an old wig shop that had been closed. The church again.
Or they just left the inventory, huh?
Yep.
Interesting.
So photographing in these places that are empty and left. And this one has a date, August 2019. I thought that was good because that was right in the heart of the just before the pandemic. I flew out of Milan February 29th that year. I was in Milan. I was in northern Italy when it hit northern Italy. I may have even gotten COVID when I was there that first time before anybody was, thought it was around. But anyway, so I thought that was an important date. Yeah, more stuff, books, empty spaces. And now, country, God, country, and, free stuff that doesn't exist. There's the kitty.
Yeah.
So this is the beginning of a slight shift here of the light. Yeah. This is the picture on the left is one of the first pictures I made in Waterville, 2008. And I always loved it. It was perfect. There's a bank there or something. But those look like poles, but they're actually trees. Sometimes trees look like poles. Religion, I'm not religious, and I'm not even Christian, but these are models, these are symbols, that mean hope, belief, faith, that kind of thing. And then there's this picture, which is just a picture from campus. I don't often take pictures from campus, but during the pandemic there was nobody around. And then it shifts to this group of work.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. You don't have a lot of people. You're kind of you watched that episode with Tim, and he says it's about how you position yourself against the world.
Yeah.
Really. Do you want to be felt in this, or do you not want to be felt in this?
Oh yeah. I mean, I think I want the picture. Well, I mean, I don't want me to be felt as much as I want what I felt to be transmitted somehow. In other words, I hope that people can feel something about this book. It doesn't have to be what I felt, and it doesn't have to be at all about me. But I hope that there's something in it that keeps coming back, that you keep coming back to. And I mean, partly it's just, who knows? It's the pictures. I feel like I'm going into this so blind because I've been working on these pictures so long that, in a way, I could certainly see them, but I almost can't see them. It's like an in-between that I feel. But I like this last group of the kind of, because it gets into these beautiful skies and light and the curves and the curving and the beauty of this little tree just over the fence and the beautiful curve of that tree and that tree, and and then the paths through the dirt and the grass, and the path through the long grass and the highway up here, maybe, right? It ends. And then it ends.
It's interesting.
And,
it definitely invokes a lot. It almost feels like there's an overwhelming sense of loneliness in that. It's almost you're confronting yourself with empty spaces all the time, I often go to those small towns, or I've driven through them, and I often feel like, is anybody here? And so you grew up in New York, you know what I mean? And that's where you're from. There's people all around all the time, and so kind of going to this place, does it kind of feel alien to you? Does it kind of feel like almost like you're transported in this other place and you're just trying to make sense of it? Help me with that.
I mean, I haven't lived in New York City for a long, long time, since 1986. So it's been a while. And, I go back there all the time, and I've been to a lot of other cities. But, so I've lived in different towns. Tivoli was tiny. When we moved there, it had a population of 700, Tivoli, New York. And then we lived in Springfield, Missouri, which had, I don't know, a couple 100,000. And a lot of chain food restaurants and churches, big churches. And then we lived in Portland. Portland is the biggest city in Maine. It has 65,000 people. So these are all small places. And I think after I left New York City, I said to myself, I never want to live in that big of a population again. I love being around it, but I need to feel space around me now in my older age. I don't know why. I just feel like I don't like crowds. Especially the time we're living in now, but it's not so much that as just, I just want to be left alone sometimes. And, New York City is a place where you're alone all the time among people. That's the beauty of it.
Yeah.
People don't believe it, but like when last apartment I lived in, and pretty much every apartment I lived in, I barely knew my neighbors. People don't even talk to you in the same building sometimes. I mean, it's not unusual. There's a famous Seinfeld episode about, saying hello to your neighbors, and then you get tired of that, so you stop, and then, it becomes uncomfortable. But people in New York leave each other alone. So in a way, it's a very lonely place. Here, I'm more likely to be spoken to if I have my camera on a tripod. Somebody will stop and say, what are you doing? As opposed to in New York, probably not. You could probably stand there with a banquet camera at Fifth Avenue on a tripod, and everybody will just walk past you or go around you or maybe look at it, but probably not even. So it's a weird thing. And the other thing is that, provincialness is not something that has to necessarily do with the provinces. So I find New Yorkers at this time in my life to be very provincial, and some people who live in the provinces to be way more open to experiences that are more global and challenging. So, that part of it, I don't mind not being in the city. Resources in the city, I love going to Paris. I love New York and love seeing shows and love watching people. I love watching them. But being here it's different. And, especially politically these days, there are people here who I know are going to think very differently than me, but there are people here who think just like me. So it's a mix. And I like that it's a mix. I feel like I live in a real place. I'm not living in somebody's idea of an old town. I'm not living in a fixed up old town. It's an old town. It's the real thing, the real deal. And I think if you look at it long enough, it reveals certain things. I mean, these may not be new things that I'm looking at, but, like I said about the color work versus black and white, I've just stopped thinking that way. I'll just make the best work I can make and hope that it stays on the right side of that line, which would otherwise become either nostalgia or porn ruin, or, color would just destroy this work because it would make it so, I don't know, it would be ugly, I think. And I think with the black and white, I'm able to find beauty in these places. I hope. At least that's my.
There's a cohesiveness for sure. You don't really. Color actually changes things a lot.
Oh boy!
And it's interesting. Yeah, And it's so funny when you get in some of the small towns too. It almost is monochromatic in its own way. And so even if you were to add color into it, it wouldn't be adding too much sometimes.
Yeah.
Except for in some cases.
Absolutely.
That's interesting. But you were also now you were talking about also, all photographers they're doing one project and they're thinking about another one. You also have a project that I referenced earlier in the show, where you were talking about going back to where you're from and kind of exploring that a little bit more and photographing it, as kind of a little project. And you don't know where that's going yet, but you have been going there. Can we take a look at some of those pictures too, and then images too, and then kind of talk to me about what you're doing? If you know yet or not know yet, and kind of how it's all making sense to you now, and yeah.
Okay. Yep. Let's try that. So this project is called Long Island Pastoral. I think I came up with the title of it because when we were looking at, I was looking at the last book we just looked at, Almost Home, with Gianluca Gambarini, and he said it's kind of like a pastoral, a pastoral, and I thought, yeah, it kind of is. It's kind of like a trip around, kind of like I'm taking you through all these places, and but I wouldn't call it that. But Long Island, this work seems like there's so much irony in the idea of it even being pastoral, or being, like that it seems like a good way to describe it. It's like a way of, it's like the title is a hope that never gets known, maybe, But anyway, so I went back there and just started driving around, walking a little bit. I went back to my home where I was raised since I was 3.5 or 4 years old. And I photographed it the first time I went back, and the second time I went back, and the third time I went back was last year. And it was a shocker because it had been completely razed, and under construction was one of these new houses. They'd even like taken out our basement and put a new basement foundation in. So it was like,
wow.
It was like a punch to the gut to see that. It was just so weird. This little house that every time I went there and looked at it, I tried to picture what it was. There I was. What is this? Where am I? And so that was a tough one. So I just photograph. It's again very intuitive. It's the way I work. I walk, I ride, and I find things that maybe look like it's not subject as much as it's how it will be described in my photograph. The kind of like I want to make certain kinds of photographs, and some things stand out as like the problems I like to take on, buildings, overgrowth, trees, and, shrubs and weeds, and complicated pictures that have a lot of things in them. So that's the way, and I'm trying to show some of the positive things, but I'm trying to combine it with some of the negative things. So if I show this, this tree and this vine and the beautiful clouds, there's also some kind of trail in the sky from a plane, and then a very unattractive fence at the bottom part of it. Delicatessen that we have that's in the actual town where I live. By the way, these pictures aren't all made in the town where I live. I'm very loose about that. It's funny. Tim said something about that. They're not all from this. Like some, they're not all this Christmas Day. They're another day. Or something like that, one of his projects. And yeah, I feel the same way. I mean, pictures are fictions anyway. So, I mean, I'm not taking pictures from other countries here, but, it doesn't have to be. It's not a book about the town I grew up in as much as it's about a town. It's about going back and looking and finding things.
The wall, and there's that fit. It's funny.
Yeah, the wall and just some pigeons, and Yeah.
Yeah. Well, no, it's that other one. It's like, what's the point of that fence? It's no longer needed. The previous one. Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
this one.
Do you? Yeah.
I
It's
love
like,
that.
what do you
I
need
love
that
that.
for?
Yeah, that's a remnant
Yeah,
of the
yeah.
original fence that's like still there for some
Yeah.
reason.
You're like, cool. It's serving its purpose well.
It hides the ugly
Yeah,
fence. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Well, it adds character. That's what it
Yeah,
does.
absolutely.
Now, do you find a humor in this? Do you find are you looking for
sometimes.
irony in some way?
Irony.
Yeah.
Yeah, humor when it's there, but quietly, yeah, and irony, certainly.
Yeah.
These pictures I do. I'm trying to find something. I don't know what it is. Like I said, this is still new stuff. I think this group that I'm showing you represents 2 of the trips. I think one of them is still not in here, and I think it's the first trip that's not in here. And a couple of them are. I take it back. It's a conglomerate. It's not in any order now. I'm trying to figure out if it should be in 3 sections for each trip, or I guess I'll go back there again. But this goes back to my Stephen Shore influence. I think I don't always make pictures like this, but Friedlander, Shore. Stephen once told me that if you look at uncommon places, that a lot of those pictures are simply intersections. And I'd never realized how much he liked intersections. And he said he just liked it as an exercise, photographing an intersection, how complicated it was and trying to find the right place for everything. And so once in a while, I'll play that same game, take something really complicated and try to make something ordered out of it.
Yeah.
And I like that. I like doing that. Of course, this is, it's a little humor. It's a little sad. It's a little whatever. That's kind of funny, I suppose. Some of the new building that's going on, some of the old.
And so you have in some ways it's kind of like I'm trying to get a feel for you, kind of reflecting on the houses and the landscape and walking the streets or the streets. Are you kind of in some way? I hate the word reminiscing because it's not reminiscing.
No,
confronting your memories a little bit. Because as a child, you walk through these places and you see a lot of houses, you see a lot of fences, and you go to the playground and you do these different things. What do you think you're hunting for there?
I'm hunting for closure. I'm hunting for my past so that I could move on to the present. I'm hunting for what I missed. Like I said, when I left home. I left friends behind, a couple of whom I'm now, in touch with, and I see them when I go down there. They're, the one of them still, neither of them live in that same town, but they're close by. Sometimes they're there, sometimes they're not. But I try to see those old friends, and that's fun for me. And I think I lost a lot of that. I mean, I'll never get it back. I lost those years of not going home because I didn't want to. Even when my parents still lived there, I'd visit them, but not very often. I just couldn't do it.
Yeah.
I found it really difficult and depressing, and I didn't know why. I couldn't even express it. But I think I'm looking for that now. I mean, when I left the first time I went to do this in 2019, and I got on the highway leaving. I was very happy to be going home, and I was on the Long Island Expressway, I think the Long Island Expressway, and I just started crying. It was like I started crying. And I couldn't stop. It was like I felt such a sad feeling when I was leaving this time. And I think that pointed to how much emotion is wrapped up in this place that I haven't really given much thought to before this. I thought, oh yeah, that's where I grew up. I don't want to go back. I hate it, that kind of thing. And, it's not that I hate it. It's that I had to get out. But you can't just go back, right? Thomas Wolfe, you can't go home again because it's not the same place. But you can try. Some of the same things are there. Some of them
was there anything that surprised you when you went back?
Many things.
anything that like I'm doing a very similar project to this. We had a discussion about this. I went back to where I was from, and I left the place, and I hated it. When I was there, I just hated it, and I just was fearful of it. I just wanted to get out of there as quickly as possible. But when I went back, I started to kind of see it differently. I saw people in retirement and kids playing, and I was just like, what? This doesn't match what I had memories of. And I'm kind of curious if that does that for you going back. You're like, and that's what I guess that's what I'm asking about when I ask that question is anything surprise you in that regard?
Yeah, but maybe not positively. For instance, I think when I was a kid, this is my house. This is the second time I went back and photographed it. This is where I grew up, and I know it doesn't mean anything in the realm of photography, but I think it's a good picture and
I do too. It's a good
how
one.
I felt, and so I think one of the things I noticed is that there just aren't people out very much, and there's a much greater suspicion of anybody who is, and they don't know. I went to the park where I used to play all the time, but not that one, but I played basketball, right there. Years, we'd be out till it got dark, then we'd sit around on our basketballs and talk. I mean, we were kids, and all the houses were like the one on the left and like mine, and now this fancy one was obviously not. That's a new house completely. But I noticed there was nobody in the park, and I've been there 3 times now to that block, to my old block, and there's never anybody in the park playing basketball. There's nobody on the swings. It's like there's nobody out playing because kids don't go out and play unless they're in an organized league. You could find little league games and lacrosse games, but you can't find kids just playing, shooting hoops at the park or playing tag or. And that's just, it's weird and it's sad. It's like an empty, it's not a ghost town. You do see people, but where you see them? You see them at the mall. You see them at IKEA. You see them at McDonald's. You see them, but you don't see them on their street playing pickup games or touch football in the street. You just don't see it. And that's huge, I think. That's a big difference. And then the houses, how much, I think the biggest shock was when I went back last year, and I don't know if that picture's in here. It might be the last one. No. Maybe. That's it, I think. Yeah. No, it's not in here, but went back last year and my house was gone. I think I told you that earlier. It's like, whoa, that was just, that was a lot too. That was a surprise. But a lot of things, like I went back to the community pool where we belonged, and you'd go hang out with your friends. And your mother would go and she'd play with her friends, and my father would go after work and swim, when he got home, and that kind of place. And it was they had, of course, redone the pool because the pool got old and they redid it. And everything was a little fancier. Everything was different, just about. Very few things were the same. And, which is okay. I mean, I expected it. It had been
naturally
many, many years. So. But yeah, I think the people out, that was the biggest thing. People not out, except if they were washing their car, maybe if they were even going to wash their own car, which people don't seem to do there anymore. So
I think what you're doing right there is fascinating. Partly to the fact is I'm kind of confronted by it too. Yeah. But I think a lot of I don't think that is an abnormal experience,
No, right.
I think there's a lot of people, of course, that stay, but the ones that leave, you know what I mean? They eventually get confronted with their roots somehow, and I think that is a fascinating exploration, and what a shift for you. That's quite, you're shooting these wide open spaces. I still see you in both of those works. I still see your style in New York as I do in Waterville, but very different places mentally and emotionally, and
Oh yeah.
It's really interesting. I'm excited to see. When do you think you'll be done with it, or do you think you're still kind of trying to understand what it is you're doing there? Yeah,
I don't know. One part of me thinks it's the next book I'll do, but at least with L'Artiere, I think I'm actually doing another book on with Dust Collective. I don't know if you're aware of them. Emily Sheffer is the person who does that. She's done a lot of work with Barbara Bosworth. She works with Barbara Bosworth, and she has her own. She went to Mass Art, MFA, and she's teaching a little now, I think. And she's a photographer herself. But Dust Collective makes handmade photography books. So they're usually inkjet and sewn or things like that, accordion full. They're beautiful objects. She makes beautiful objects, limited editions, 100 copies, things like that. So we're working on one with, she has my pictures that I made in the hills near Assisi that I made in 2014. And she's coming up with a design and idea. So that's a new way of working. I did that with Stanley Barker with the punk work, where they designed it. They designed a book and did the, and then we went back and forth with the sequences. But it's fun for me to work that way as well. But I'm hoping this Long Island work comes together in the next couple of years, if not sooner. I still haven't tried to put all 3 years together in a book because I've been working on this other one so much. I might try to do that first and then go back one more time and maybe put those pictures in where they need to be. I think I just keep getting pulled back. I mean, it's funny. I didn't want to go the first time, and every time I go back. So I hope in the next
life does
years,
that. Life does that. I think in a lot of ways, especially if you're running from something, if it feels like you're running, because it's almost like no, you got to deal with that for me to take you to the next place.
Yeah, you got to deal with it. Right?
Yeah, it's interesting, and I don't know what about that is so important. And maybe this is very esoteric, and it's in our conversation, and almost like woo woo, but there is something about it, and I think it's a very common experience, and I'm excited to see what you do with that. So I just have one more question for you. We've had a wonderful conversation today, and I'm kind of curious what you've been teaching for years. You're about to retire. You're still making work. I'm really curious what your advice for people out there that are trying to be makers themselves.
Yeah. Well, that's something, it's something I think about all the time because I have students all the time. And and photographers don't necessarily, they always ask us, what are your students doing now? It's like, I don't know, working at Kmart probably, for a few years. And then maybe McDonald's, and maybe at some point they'll go to grad school. And maybe. It's hard to, being an artist is not a job. It really isn't a job. It's a calling. It's a practice. It's a practice. It's like you chose to be a monk, and then you're going to try to find a way of making some money at it, or finding a monastery that you could live in and contribute to it. Right. So it's like that. As you don't want. Obviously, it's not like being a monk, but it's like that in the sense that I think you got to really want to do it. And if you really want to do it, my advice is just do it, and don't. Worry about the competition. It's fierce. There's no question. It's fierce. There are so many of us out there, and so many. I'm always amazed at how many good photographers there are. I could only imagine the ones that I don't know about. But the ones I know about is like they keep coming and coming, and you just got to stop. Push them away, or take them in. But you can't see that as a pressure. You have to see that as a promise, and that I think. The only way to get anywhere is to make work. So whenever you're stuck, there's only one way out, and it's not through your head. It's through your camera. It's by making pictures and looking at them. Because if you sit there, you'll talk yourself out of everything before you even get out of bed. So I think the idea is to keep making work, especially when you're stuck, because that work will get you out, will get you where you want to go. And the same thing with a career, that work will get you where you want to go. And when you're stuck, like when you're in a place where you might need help, then, depending on where you are in your age, not even age, but where you are in your life, maybe education's important. Maybe it's an MFA, maybe it's a workshop, maybe it's there's so many good workshops now to take, in the States, in Europe. It's like there's all the stuff that didn't exist when I was, when I would have been great. So I'd say, use those resources. And when you do study, use those resources. Make sure you drain that teacher, dry, and that teacher gives you everything that until you force him to retire because he's got nothing left. No, I'm kidding.
Is that what happened to you? No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, it eventually happened.
They took everything from me. Yeah,
I got nothing.
A whole bunch of geniuses out there. Yeah,
right, sure. So I just, that's the work is everything. I think the work and the practice, not the product. The process over product. The practice is practice and process. I think most important.
Yeah.
And keep making the work and putting it in boxes and looking at it and sharing it. And if you can deal with it, become part of a community that helps. A photographic community in wherever you are, that can really help the right people. If you're with some people who are interesting, and you can all, if you're coming out of grad school, stay in touch with the couple of people that you really admire and like, and do that. Use those resources, and look. That's the main thing. Look at other photography to learn. That's like read books, but look at books too. That would be my best shot, and be prepared for a lifetime. It's the beautiful thing about it is that it's a life. It's not a job. So if you're lucky enough to find a way into it, and when I say lucky, it's not really, you just have to work and keep making the work. And once you get there, you will see what it is to be an artist, and it's both wonderful and difficult. But it will take you for a ride, and it will last your whole life, which is more than you could say for most things that people do. So, I think photography is a great way to spend your life if you're serious about it. It teaches you everything you need to know.
Yeah. There's so much buried in it. And that's the funny part about doing this podcast is you're right. There are tons of photographers out there and lots of people making images. And what I wasn't expecting in this was all these like little things that I would learn, these little life lessons that I was getting. It's, yes, there's beautiful images. Yes, there's interesting stories. But there were these really interesting takeaways, like these really interesting life lessons that are buried in there. And to be a photographer is to live. It's a life. I love that. I love what you said there. That's great. That's great stuff.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for coming on the show today. I really enjoyed having you.
It's a pleasure to talk with you. And thank you for doing all your background work, your research, your homework. That really makes for an interesting conversation. So I enjoyed it tremendously.
Of course.
Yeah.
Well, I care. I'm really interested in this stuff.
Evidently, yeah.
And you're really interesting. And so once again, thank you so much. And to everyone that's made it this far, thank you so much for joining us on the Urbanaut Podcast. If you like content like this, please help us with the algorithm. Please like, share, and comment down below. That all helps us with all the computer juices, and that gets people to watch content like this. So please do that for us. And if you really, really like content like this, consider joining our Patreon page and becoming a subscriber there and helping support content like this so we can keep bringing cool new artists to you. So thank you so much for joining us. And as always, we'll see you next time.